in conversation with Debbie Weiss. Debbie Weiss is the author of the award-winning memoir available as his Midlife Widow's Search for Love about creating a new life after losing her husband and high school sweetheart of 32 years. Among other awards, the book has the gold medalist in the 2024 Independent Publisher Book Award in Aging, Death and Dying. Her writing has been published in the New York Times, Modern Love column, Huffington Post, and Reader's Digest, among other publications. A former lawyer, she earned an MFA in creative writing from St. Mary's College of California in 2020. She can be found hiking on a yoga mat or discussing the virtue of she's with her second life partner, Randal. And in today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy and excitement to have on the show today with me, Debbie Wise. Welcome on the show, Debbie. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Peter. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's quite a joy, really. I'm quite excited that we are here to sit down and talk about your striking memoir. Quite beautiful that you're here. I'm excited for this conversation.
Thank
Yeah,
you. It'll be
absolutely.
fun.
So, Deb, I need to first say that I am pulled back. I am impressed. I am, captivated by the description of your novel, available as his, A Midlife Widow's Search for Love. And I would like to ask you what inspired you to write this book? What led to the making of it? How did it get started? If you can run us through the foundation, the making of the book, that'll be very great for a start.
Thank you. It's a memoir. So everything that happened in the book actually did happen to me.
Mm,
And I wrote it because I was with my late husband for 32 years, as you said in the intro. I knew him since I was 7. We were all family friends. We got together for my senior prom in high school here in California. He was my one and only true love. And then he died when he was 53 of cancer, and I was 50. And I was very isolated. He was a software guy, and I was a lawyer. I'd been a lawyer. Um, we just hung out with each other. And when he was gone, I had to create a new life, and I didn't know what to do. So I turned to writing, among other things, because I'd always enjoyed it. And as I got more serious, I went from writing little essays to writing a whole book about the experience.
mm. That's an amazing one, really. And I can imagine. Now I'm coming back to a question that just popped up in my head. I think I should ask you now. I wanted to know how were you able to deal with because I know writing a book can bring and sport out. It comes in different manner, and from one author to another, it differs from person to person. Now I wanted to ask you, how were you able to cope with the emotion associated with the making of this book? Was it heavy for you in some point? Was it relieving for you to write some parts? Does it bring back some memories that are quite awful for you? Was it tearful as well in the process? Could you run us through the emotion? I love that smile. The emotion associated with the making of this memoir.
Well, you're right. It was very emotional, Peter.
Mm,
I started writing in general about 6 months after my husband died. I went back to a weekly writing class that I'd taken beforehand. It was mostly retired people and about a 2-hour class.
mm,
And I was angry and I was fragmented and I was just writing little vignettes, just short things about things that were happening to me. And then I just I kept writing short things. And then a few of the really nice people in that class had a writing group and they invited me to join them. And that was really meaningful to me because they were so nice and I had like a community. So I kept turning things in and I'm pretty, I guess, organized. So I would really wanted, since I had these classes, this group, I would turn in one thing on Thursday, one thing on Friday. And then I started to take more classes.
mm,
And finally I got an editor. And then ultimately I went back to college. So it was very emotional because dealing with everything I'd been through with George, my late husband, his name was George,
mm,
and he had been in denial about being sick and had left his parents out of his death experience. So that was really hard. So for a
Mm,
while, it was very emotional and very heavy. And I would just stay at home and stay in bed and write all day, and get up in the
wow.
afternoon. And
Mm,
then finally, enough time had passed. He died in 2013, and my book came out in 2022. So finally, I was back at college with a bunch of people in a very intense writing program. And I started to look more at the craft of writing. Like, how could I make this good? How would this be interesting? Why would anybody besides me want to read it? Um,
mm,
and then I started to get more into kind of trying to write well as opposed to just dealing with the emotions and getting deep enough into it.
mm. Wow, thank you so much for answering that. I think there's a lot you've uncovered in there. And I can see that you've got, 9 years after his death, all the way from 2013 to having the book published in 2022. That's such an amazing time. I mean, imagine how that would look like. But then let's go back now, because you wrote candidly about the loss of your husband. Now, I wanted to ask you what helped you the most in navigating the emotional aftermath of that kind of grief? And also, were there a moment where you realized you were beginning to heal or at least move forward? What did that look like for you?
Oh, thank you for asking. Originally, I was very upset and I had a lot of guilt and I
Mm.
wasn't doing very well. I also made the mistake about 14 months after he died of starting to date again. And that was
Oh,
interesting. And that also led to the book because
oh,
that was just a lot to write about. That was just a lot of new things to put in. I started to heal. First of all, at one point, I had a very good grief therapist. I really recommend grief therapy. It's good to have someone to talk to who's sort of outside your regular world that you can be
mm,
completely open with.
mm,
And then what helped me also were getting different communities. I got really into yoga and hiking. And at some point, I realized, I was making some friends. I was getting out. I was having a life. I was motivating myself. I wasn't just sitting at home. And I found that helpful. And then probably the biggest moment for me was when I had an article published in the Huffington Post. You could
mm,
used to be able to blog through them. And it was about the guilt I felt over losing my husband, caregiver guilt, about being angry and not a great caregiver, flawed anyway.
mm.
And within a few hours of publishing, I had maybe 70 comments from people who'd been through the same thing, who'd
Wow.
said that they'd cared for loved ones who'd been in denial or they'd lost spouses and they'd felt their world was so different. And they were encouraging, they were kind. And I realized I wasn't so alone. And a lot of
Mm,
other people had been through this. And that even when I put out kind of the worst version of my story, people weren't shocked. They were grateful. They were kind. They said, hey, I've been through this. Thank you for making me feel less alone. You're going to be okay. And
mm,
even though that was just online and through comments on an article, to me, that was very meaningful in
mm,
terms of kind of shifting my viewpoint.
mm. Oh, wow. That's such a beautiful answer you've given, really. And I'd like you to raise the book to the camera just so we can see what it looks like. Yeah, available as is. Would you like to talk about what inspired the making of this title name for the memoir? And that's such a beautiful cover as well. Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
very beautiful. I think
Um,
that's
my,
Fight by Hate.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The publisher I work with, She Writes Press, is known for doing very good covers. They have a good designer, and I kind of liked it because see, I felt kind of lonely. So see, I'm the one red strawberry, right, with all the blue ones who fit in.
Mm,
The title came because it came out of dating as an older person. Because when people are younger, they're change, right? I mean, when I was with my late husband, we got together. I was 17, he was 21. We grew up together. But when you're
wow.
older, you're kind of set in your ways. So you're available as is. At least in the United States, if someone's selling real estate, like a house, and it's ratty, and
Mm,
it's not that great, and then they say they're not going to make changes, they say, and that could be a really beautiful old home, with gorgeous patinas, great lines, or
yeah.
it could mean, it's got termites, it's not that great. So we
Mm,
kind of came up with the title available as is because that's how us older singles are. We've got our
mm,
baggage, we're set in our ways, we're available as is. Most of us aren't going to change a lot.
Well, it's so beautiful and so fun to get to know how the making of the title name came to be. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to ask you, Debbie, just for someone who is recently widowed and feeling stuck, what would you say to help them take their first step towards rebuilding their life, after being widowed, after losing someone so dear and close to them? And also, so many widows talk about losing their sense of identity. How did you begin to find Debbie, back again after years of being a wife and caregiver? I would love your take on this.
Oh, well, thank you. That was hard. What started to help me to heal and
Mm,
move forward, I was retired at that point, so I wasn't working anymore, and I don't have any kids, so that's off. That wasn't involved. But I really got into hiking. And on
mm,
weekends, I would do these hikes with these groups. We have meetup groups, and you can go and sign up and join people. And
yeah.
I was into yoga. I joined a community of people who do yoga, women. It was a really nice group of women, middle-aged women, and they included me in the things they did. Some were single, mostly divorced, and one widow. And they would have, like a Saturday night dinner party or so. There were things to do. And then I got into writing, which gave me a bit of a purpose. And that was another group of people. So to help me and feel an identity was to get out of the house and to be
Mm,
with other people and to see that I
yeah.
could still function and I could still find some enjoyment. I wasn't perfect, but hiking, California is really beautiful for nature. We have a lot of hillsides and
Mm,
nice hiking trails. So getting out in nature was really helpful to me. And then I started to see that, I could function, I could set things up, I could do things, I could promise to read other people's work or join somebody on a hike and make connections. For me, what was really valuable was sort of going back to my childhood and figuring out what I'd like to do, and
mm,
then figuring out kind of how to do that with other people, how to connect. So I wasn't
mm.
just alone all the time. And that was really helpful.
Wow. That's such a beautiful one because I can imagine what it would look. I think you've got an amazing, a shocking and striking, compelling story that so many
Thank
people will
you.
find to be quite interesting and even be able to learn from because sometimes it can be very depressive to lose somebody so close, somebody whom you've built a life together with, somebody whom you've stayed together. I mean, the absence of that alone, I can't imagine how that would feel like. And that itself could bring somebody into depression, into a striking state of loneliness, a state of you just being on your own. It's a striking moment and you've written an amazing, story around this. That's quite impressive. Very
Thank you.
impressive. Yeah. And in the book also, you opened up about the emotional roller coaster of dating again, the vulnerability, the rejection that comes with it, even questions around self-worth. Now, what happened? What helped you stay grounded during all those ups and downs? If there is anything that helped you?
Well, I didn't always stay grounded. One thing that helped was that I was writing. So it was funny because I joke, I wrote my book to help other widowed people and to
Yeah.
talk about my journey. But I also joke that I wrote the book to warn other midlife women about the poor quality of many, not all, but many available midlife men. I mean, they just weren't, most of them really weren't that great. And what kept me grounded is honestly my sense of humor. I have a good sense of humor in the absurd. My book is actually funny because dating as a grown up is funny.
It's
I
funny.
mean, it's hilarious. You meet these people and they've never grown up, and it's like, okay, I'm talking to a guy who's 60 and he's maybe, maybe 12 years old. Okay, this is interesting.
Mm,
Um, so I think it was a matter of just living with the absurd, just saying, okay, this is a ridiculous situation. I'm just going to go
mm,
with it. I'm going to laugh at it. And sometimes it was upsetting. Taking breaks was important. I think for most of us who were, when we're dating and online, people take breaks and they pull away from it and then they go back when they have
mm,
the the energy to tackle it again.
Mm. Wow, that is such a lovely answer you've got there. And now I would love to move forward because stepping back a bit, you were with your husband for 32 years, which is incredible. Now, what was it like re-entering the dating world after all that time? I'll love your take on that as well.
It was so weird. I've got to tell you, Peter, it was so weird because I hadn't dated since I was a senior in high school, and that was
Really?
1981. So I hadn't
Wow.
dated since I was 1981 and I was 17.
Gee.
Um, we weren't married the whole time, but my late husband was my senior prom date. So I didn't date in college or when I was in law school or all the times when, people do this in their 20s and 30s, right? I didn't do that. So I
Mm,
was really naive and I had no sense of what this was like. So I was kind of shocked at how different it was. And what really surprised me was honestly how weird the men were. I'm going to go off topic a little bit, but my father is also a widow. My mom died when he was 42 and I was 10. And he dated in the 1970s. And he said he was very popular with some women because they said he was the only adult single man they knew. He was mature. He was a good, he was a very adult person. He was a great dad. He maintained our home. He had a big job. He, did these things. And so I'd sort of assumed when I met people online that they would seem like people I knew. But I think by this age, a lot of the sane people are married and they stay married. I would have been married. My dad would have been married, if we weren't widowed. So you meet people online who are kind of off. And I was so inexperienced, I didn't realize it.
mm,
So, as an example, my very first real date was a guy who went on and on about his ex and how devastated he was and how miserable he was and how awful all this was and how depressed he'd been. And then he went on to the next woman. So it was basically like a therapy session. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'm with this really, well, if
oh,
not
that is
messed up, certainly
interesting.
inconsiderate guy. So
That
it
is
was just
very
weird to
interesting.
meet people. Yeah, it was just meeting these people who were just so weird.
That is such an interesting. Do you have that incorporated as well in the book? In the
I
book.
do.
Oh, that's very
I
interesting. Oh,
do. I have that
now I
in the
see why you
book.
find it
I
very
go through
funny.
some of the strange men I met
Oh,
and kind of my reaction and what that was like. Yeah.
wow. Sometimes dating can be so funny, especially when you go and you just get to see different people's reaction, the speech, what they talk about, etc. That's quite a lot, really. That sounds to be something that I love to jump on much afterward. Thank you for sharing. That's really captivating and fascinating as well. And just apart from available as is, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
No, I'm not doing another book right now. I am on Substack,
Oh,
which is a writing platform, and I post stuff there occasionally, and people can find me there. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, just Debbie Weiss Facebook, Debbie Weiss author, I think on Instagram, but I don't have another book right now.
hmm.
I do have a
Uh,
writing class I'm teaching for widows, and I teach a lot of writing. I've taught writing classes,
hmm.
but I'm
Fantastic.
not a full book.
Oh, that's great. Now, just in case we have some viewers who are watching this, what advice would you give a struggling writer, especially one who's looking forward to writing in the genre of nonfiction, memoirs like yourself? What advice would you give somebody in this category?
Well, it's very hard to get published these days, and it's hard to get a lot of attention to your book unless you're already known because the market is so crowded. Publishing
Mm,
houses are consolidating, and there's so much material coming from everywhere.
yeah.
So I think the best I could offer is to enjoy the process and just write the best book you can and also to do what resonates for you. I mean, I know I felt things were good when I'd like be tearing up or laughing or I'd feel something.
Mm,
I had a very good editor. If you're really serious, I would recommend a good editor because it's
mm,
hard to work by yourself and not get kind of
absolutely.
kind of twisted. You lose your perspective. Before
Mm,
that stage, having a writing group is very helpful. I mean, again, I went back to school and got a master's, which is a 2-year degree, but most people don't do that. But I do think having a writing group and ultimately having an editor is helpful. and
Mm,
then just writing what you feel you need to write, what gets you, emotionally, and then try to enjoy the process more than
mm.
anything else.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful advice you've got in there. I'm hoping that viewers, even including myself, would love to utilize. Now, I have another question just pop up in my head, which I think it's quite particular when I'm interviewing authors who has written nonfiction genre, because I'm a huge fan of memoirs. I love real life stories. Yeah, I love it so much. One of the things I love to ask is, having had your story out in the public, you have a book written about a part or some part of your life, and somebody, a stranger out there that you have no idea who they are reading the book. How does that make you feel as a person? One once told me, "Oh, Peter, it makes me feel so naked. I feel so naked," because it was an extremely striking memoir on HIV/AIDS transmission and all of those things. Now, I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you, yeah, how does it make you feel having this book published as an author? I'm very sure your own experience might be a bit different from author to author based on what's been written, Some who has written a story about war, or what I feel fulfilled. I can remember one telling me I feel fulfilled because I had to tell the story. And
Hmm.
this person said I must tell the story when he was alive. And I did.
Yeah.
I was fulfilling his wish much after he's gone away. Now, I wanted to
Hmm.
ask you, how does it make you feel having available as is story published? What feeling does it give you as an individual?
Well, I think at first I went a little bit into denial and I kind of forgot that it would be released, that other people would read it. Because, I just stayed at home and I wrote it and I went to school and I read pieces in class. For me, when we were in school and all, we don't, when you talk about your book or you talk about another memoir author, you don't say you did this. Like, oh, why did you go to that bar? You say the narrator.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you say, the
absolutely.
narrator. So it gives you a little distance.
Yeah.
And then my book was about me at a certain time in my life, which was years ago. And so
Mm,
you pick a certain place and time, and it's usually for a memoir, a time when you're vulnerable or going through something really hard because you need drama for a book, right? You need
mm,
something to happen. So in a funny way, for me, I kind of resolved it because I felt like this is a character. This was me at a certain time. It's creative nonfiction, so some of the timing and people are condensed, or else it would be too many characters and too much time with nothing happening. And again, I got really into the craft of writing. That was really became important to me. I wanted it, it reads like fiction. I wanted it to read like fiction. I didn't want people
wow.
to feel out of or at an essay or like, oh, I went here, this narrator went here, she went here. I wanted to like, you're here, you're with me now. So
Mm,
for me, it is very, very personal, but
mm,
at the same time, it almost feels now later, now that I'm stable, I'm partnered, many years have passed. I spent so much time trying to work on making it good that I feel a bit removed from it. I'm me, and this is the narrator. This is a narrator. Does that make sense?
absolutely.
I hope
That's an
that makes
amazing answer, really. I
sense.
love your
Okay.
answer, and I love the way you had to make it and said, "Oh, this is me, but this is the narrator." Sometimes, when I write narrative poetry, and I love using that word, the narrator. I know there's a protagonist in there, which is clearly the author, but I'll say, "Oh no, the narrator," in quote. In reviews, I love using that style, and sometimes when I need to, I'll be like, then I'll mention the author's name. Anthony went ahead and showed us this part, etc. So I think that's a very lovely technique you've utilized, quite beautiful and quite literal. And I like the fact that you even mentioned that the book reads like fiction. It got me thinking you must have utilized some lovely literature qualities in it, because I love it when memoirs reads like fiction. I think that reminds me of a particular statement somebody made in past. The A real memoir is the one that reads like fiction. Yeah, I think somebody said something of that nature, which I find to be quite captivating, really. That's some of the beauty. I mean, I have a lot of phrases that somebody said in the past that I keep in my head. This is one of the beauty of hosting literature podcast, literature show, where you have people's talk in your head and you're like, oh yeah, I remember somebody once said this, and it makes an
Yeah.
interesting conversation into bookish conversation, literature talk, etc. This is really inspiring, really, Debbie. This is very interesting. And Very
Great.
fascinating. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview and would love to get a copy of Available as Is, a midlife widow search for love, on what platform is it available on for purchase?
Well, it's obviously there's your basic hard copy, and
Mm.
it's also on Kindle. So it's digital. There's a Kindle version. It's available on Amazon. It's in Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's 99 cents. Otherwise, it's
Oh,
yeah.
fantastic.
So it's you can get it on Amazon. It's available through most bookstores, independent
Mm.
bookstores. If you don't have it there, if they don't have it, you can order it. But
Yeah.
it's pretty mainstream. It's just it's not physically in a lot of bookstores right now because it's been out for a while and a couple of
Oh.
year, 2.5 years.
Mm.
And it's in some libraries. I know that. I look up, it's in like 90 libraries or something. So
Wow.
you can request it at your library and order it through there. I know a lot of people do that, and because I'm in a book club, and it's a very economical way to read a lot of books.
Mm.
But it's available. The easiest thing is it's on Amazon.
I love that part. That's so fun. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Debbie Weiss' book directly on Amazon and Barnes& and Nobles and also on our website. I also left a link to our social
Thank you.
media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Debbie, for coming on to talk about your impressively written Available as Is. I'm also this conversation is so wholesome, so captivating, thought provoking, fascinating, and quite educative for me. Thank you very much for coming on to talk about it.
Thank you, Peter. You were very kind, and I really enjoyed this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure as well.